Chapter 3. Adam yawned as he carried a hammer and some nails to the fence that surrounded the horse pasture. Today, he wouldn't have minded bringing over one of the workers that he'd hired to repair Walker Stevenson's ranch. But the agreement he made with Elle was that he would show up to help her, and he was a man of his word. He flung a leg over the low wooden fence and stretched. Last night had been another late night attending a benefit gala. Stevenson Be Safe Developments also helped disadvantaged children. His brothers, mum, and grandparents had all been there. It had been good to see them in spite of their attempts at matchmaking. Last night he had danced with many beautiful women, many of them introduced to him by his mother. Though these women were attractive and accomplished in their own way, something was missing. When he married, even if she was his fake wife, he wanted a woman who appreciated the simple things in life and who was kind and generous to others. Someone he could trust. Of all the women he'd talked with last night, he didn't think any of them were what he was looking for. Adam smiled to himself as he remembered his conversation with Jack as they ended the evening. "So, Adam, have you found a lady that catches your interest?" Jack raised an eyebrow as he cornered him at the drink table. "Honestly, I'm not sure." Adam picked up a drink and grimaced as he looked at Jack. "All the ladies here tonight are beautiful, but they seem a little spoiled and superficial." He glanced around the room, noticing the ladies he'd danced with in their long silk gowns, gold and diamonds glittering in their necklaces, earrings, and rings. "I realized tonight I don't want that. I want a woman who is a little more real." "Ah, sounds to me like you might be talking about someone you've already met. Am I right?" Jack gulped down the rest of his drink. "Maybe. I'm just wavering back and forth because marrying someone seems like a big commitment. I mean, I'm not looking for love, but it would be good if I could relate to her on a personal level if I'm to stay married to her for a year, right?" "You have been thinking about this." Jack rubbed a hand over his dark stubble. "So, who are you considering?" "Elle Jennings." "So, you took my advice." Jack gave a low whistle. "Elle is as real as they come, and she's beautiful, but she doesn't like me much." Adam looked at his brother for a long moment, still sorting out his thoughts. It would take a bit of convincing to get her to agree to this. "You should do it. Ask Elle to marry you. You did make that pact with her, after all. She might just surprise you." Jack pounded his fist gently into his shoulder. Adam could hardly sleep last night as Jack's words tumbled around in his head. When he woke up this morning, he'd made a decision. Adam would ask Elle to marry him. He would ask her to be his fake wife. She would get money, and he would get a wife and Grand's old ranch. Now, the hard part would be to convince her to renew their marriage pact, and convince her it would benefit them both. A loud creak at the back door of the house drew Adam's attention. He looked up and saw Elle walking down the path from the house, her long blonde hair pulled back into a ponytail, looking freshly scrubbed and beautiful in jeans and a t-shirt. He was so distracted at seeing her walking across the yard, he slammed his thumb with the hammer. Groaning, he paced back and forth along the fence, shaking his hand out until the pain ebbed into a dull ache. "Practicing a new dance?" Adam turned to see Elle leaning against the fence, her arms folded across her chest with a big grin on her face. "Just a little annoyance. Nothing that won't heal." He stopped pacing, still frowning as he rubbed a finger over his thumb. "Let me take a look." Elle stood in front of him and picked up his hand, gently rubbing her finger over his thumb. "It's turning black and blue. That must hurt." Adam nodded, breathing in her lavender scent, the pain suddenly forgotten. Or was it the gentle way she stroked his thumb? Adam's throat tightened and his heart pummeled against his chest at her gentle touch. Heat ran up and down the length of his arm as her fingers traced his thumb. Suddenly she leaned down and kissed the tip of his finger. The sweet softness of her soft strawberry-colored lips as they touched his thumb made him wish those lips were pressed against his own. "That's what my dad used to do when I hurt myself. Then he would ask, 'Is it better now?'" Al gave him a half-smile at the memory. A rose-colored stain surfaced on her neck and cheeks, and she let go of his hand. With a throaty chuckle, she asked, "So, is it better?" Adam missed her attention and needed more of it. He stepped closer, and she glanced up at him, surprised. "Not yet." Adam moved closer to Elle and put one hand around her waist while his other hand gently caressed the softness of her cheek. He pulled her closer, drowning in her green eyes. His gaze shifted downward to her moist, full lips. He bent his head slowly, anticipating his first taste of their sweetness. Without warning, Elle turned her head slightly, and his lips landed on her cheek. She stepped back, confusion clouding her eyes. I can't, Adam." Elle backed away, and with a shaking hand tucked a loose tendril of hair behind her ear. "I have to go. Bella is coming to help me today, and I have to get some things done before she gets here." Adam watched as she hurried away from him, a little frustrated that she'd put him off. He decided he wasn't giving up in his pursuit of his fake wife. In fact, to his way of thinking, the chase had just begun. The warm caress of Adam's lips lingered. Elle put a hand to her cheek as she hurried toward the ranch yard. Adam's attempt to kiss her had flustered her, but she found herself wanting him to try it again. Her heart raced, and she traced her lips with the tip of her finger. She suspected next time she would likely give in to her attraction. Angry for her weakness when it came to Adam, she began hauling things out of the garage with more force than necessary. It didn't take long before there were tools, tables, and even old sports equipment sitting in the middle of the yard. Before long, Bella drove up the driveway and parked next to the garage. "Wow, this is a lot of stuff to go through." Bella walked toward her, shaking her head at the large, unorganized pile. Together they started to sort through Elle's dad's old tools and the sports equipment and other random things they found in the garage. They had been sorting for a few minutes when Detective Joanna Kingsley drove onto the yard in her police cruiser. Elle had known Joanna ever since she could remember. She had been her mother's best friend and had always been there for Elle. She'd been sort of like Elle's second mother and fairy godmother all rolled into one. "Looks like we've got our work cut out for us." Joanna leaned down to give Ginger's head a long scratch. The front door opened and her stepmother and Carly walked toward them. "What do you think you're doing?" Lilith Jennings charged toward them, waving her hand over the large pile of stuff. "Sorting through items in the garage, seeing if we can make a little extra money at a garage sale." Her stepmother hovered over them like a threatening storm. Elle stiffened. She glanced at her friends before lowering her head. Why couldn't her stepmother find something about her that she loved? "As if that's really going to help. What a stupid idea," Carly scoffed, scrunching up her nose, making her look 10 years old instead of 17. A hand squeezed hers, and Elle turned to see Joanna stand beside her. Her godmother must have used the detective glare on Carly because suddenly her stepsister stopped talking and looked away. "As long as you bring all the money from the sale to me, not one dime goes to feed those animals of yours. Got it?" Lilith shook a well-manicured finger at Elle. "Of course." Elle nodded, confused. Since she was 15, she'd been responsible for the animals, paying for their upkeep with her own money. The thought of taking anything from her stepmother had never crossed her mind. "And get this stuff out of the middle of the yard by the time Carly and I come back home." Elle heaved a sigh of relief as Lilith and Carly walked toward the car and drove away. "I don't know what your father was thinking when he married that woman. It drives me around the bend how she talks to you." Joanna hugged Elle. "I can tell you one thing. Your own sweet mama would never have put up with anyone talking to you that way. Or your dad either, I might add." "Lilith is extra stressed right now between losing her job and the foreclosure on the ranch." Elle's shoulders lifted in a shrug. "No, Elle. Your stepmother has treated you poorly ever since your father died. She's found a way to take everything that's gone wrong in her life and blame it on you." Joanna held her hand. "It's time that stops. And, sweetie, it's time you stop making excuses for her." Elle shifted from one foot to the other and nodded, unsure of what to say. Making excuses for her stepmother's mean ways had become a way of life. She wasn't sure she knew how to stop. "Changes aren't easy, but it helps when you have people in your corner who care about you." Joanna squeezed her shoulder, giving a meaningful glance at the big pile of stuff near their feet. "I know. I appreciate you and any advice you can give me. I really do." Elle put her arm around Joanna's waist, resting her head on her shoulder, needing the comfort that only her second mother could give. "Hey, you two, slacking on the job?" Bella grinned, crouching in the middle of the pile of equipment. "All right, we'll get to it." Joanna kissed her on the top of her head and bent down to finish the job. They were almost done sorting when Adam walked up. "Just finished fixing the fence." Adam pulled off his gloves and looked around. "Are you having a sale?" A warm heat began in her belly that rose quickly to her face. She peered at Adam, unsettled and embarrassed by his question. "We're having a garage sale here at the ranch on Saturday." Elle swallowed to hold back tears that threatened to spill down her cheeks. Thought of selling her dad's things broke her heart. "Why are you selling so much stuff?" Adam persisted, glancing around. "Your dad's tools, his old golf clubs. Why aren't you keeping these?" He stopped what he was doing, his eyebrow lifted, waiting for her answer. The voice inside Elle's head whispered, "You have to tell him the truth. As embarrassing and humiliating as it is to admit that you've lost the very thing you were desperate to hold on to, the facts are you have to tell him. You've avoided saying anything to him because of fear. You're scared he'll lose all respect for you or feel sorry for you. You can't control how Adam feels, but you still have to be honest about what's happened." Sighing, she said, "The bank is foreclosing on the mortgage on the ranch, and we have to move here in 3 weeks, so the fewer items we have to move, the better." "Sorry to hear that." "You didn't know." Adam inhaled a deep breath and blew it out slowly. A frown hovered over the corners of his mouth. His mouth opened suddenly, and he closed it just as quickly. It seemed like he wanted to say more, but Elle didn't want to hear his pity. It wouldn't do any good to hear it. No, she needed to focus on those things that she could control. "We did it. We're ready for Saturday's sale." Bella looked up. "What else do you need help with?" Elle glanced around until she spotted the old garden shed behind the house. "You know what? We should empty everything out of that old shed and see if there's anything in there that can be restored and sold. But first we should sweep out the garage and put all the stuff we found for the sale back inside. The rest of this broken stuff needs to be taken to the local recycling center." "I have a better idea," Joanna interrupted. "Elle, why don't you and Adam go through the shed and decide what you want to sell, and Bella and I will clean and organize this stuff in the garage." Elle inhaled a sharp breath. That would mean being alone with Adam in a cramped space. That wouldn't work. "Why don't I help you instead, Joanna?" Elle offered. "Bella, you don't mind helping Adam, do you?" Bella studied Adam for a moment, a knowing smile turning up the corners of her mouth. Her friend didn't have to be so obvious, Elle thought, her cheeks heating with embarrassment. Bella's smile widened. "As much as I would enjoy that, there's a small problem with your idea." "What's that?" Elle bit out. "I don't know what you want to get rid of." Yes, that would be a problem, but the thought of being alone with Adam made her heart hammer in her chest. "Fine." Elle started toward the shed, motioning once for Adam to follow. Adam's long-legged strides soon caught up to Elle. "Elle, I want to talk to you about the possible move that you and your stepmother and stepsister are making." Did they have to talk about this again? This was even more embarrassing than she thought. It's not a possible move, it's a real thing that's going to happen. We don't have the money to pay the mortgage, so the bank is taking the ranch." Elle sighed as they reached the garden shed, putting her hand on the metal door handle. "Wait." Adam covered her hand with his, blue eyes zeroing in on hers, his voice a little unsteady. "What if I told you there was a way—" Suddenly Adam's words were interrupted by a loud thump. "There's something moving around in there." Elle slowly opened the shed door. The sun was still high enough in the sky to shine light inside the darkness of the outbuilding. "Stay here. Let me go in first. We don't know if it's a wild animal or what it is." He gently moved Elle beside him and stepped inside. The shed was cluttered with a whole bunch of gardening tools as well as tarps and other unused items. A musty odor and dust crept up her nose, causing her to sneeze. A soft whimper drew Elle's attention to the corner. Adam stepped forward carefully around the tarps, gardening tools, and bags of garden seed. Elle stood motionless as Adam lifted the corner of the dirty tarp. A teenage girl sat up, scurrying to the far corner. Her dark brown eyes grew big, her teenage body thin and bony as it curled in on itself, like a bruised dog hiding from the world. Elle crept closer. Adam crouched down so he was eye level with the young girl. "Don't be afraid. We won't hurt you. You're safe here." Adam's voice was as soft and velvety as a warm blanket. The compassion in his voice softened the anger she'd felt toward him. She'd always seen him as this cool, somewhat detached computer guy, analytical and distant from the rest of the world. The teenager covered her upper body with thin arms that poked out from a tattered hoodie. Her eyes widened and she shook her head from side to side, revealing her disbelief in Adam's words. Elle put her hand on Adam's shoulder and crouched beside him. She had a hunch this girl would respond better to a woman. Perhaps she'd been hurt by the men in her life, but whatever the reason, Elle wanted to get through to her. "What's your name?" At Elle's soft words, the girl relaxed her arms and peered up at Elle. Still, she didn't speak. "Are you hungry?" A single nod was all she managed. "If you come with me, I'll make you a sandwich." Elle stretched out her hand and the teenager put her small one in Elle's. Adam backed up to let Elle and the girl pass, and he followed behind. They walked out into the sunshine and toward the house. Soon they were sitting at the picnic table outside, with the girl devouring the sandwiches Elle had made. "What's your name?" Elle hoped the girl felt safe enough with them to answer. "Bree," she whispered, and took the last bite of her sandwich, her eyes lowered. "That's a nice name," Elle whispered. The girl peered up at her, a small smile hovering on her lips. "Do you remember how you got here?" Joanna's question reminded Elle of her friend's detective instincts. "Yes." Bree took a deep breath before she began. "I was in Detroit. When 2 men found me, I had run away from my foster parents' home." The teenager swallowed quickly before continuing. "Those men said they were helping me. I noticed other girls in the same house they took me to had been either homeless or on drugs too, when these men had offered to help. We didn't realize they would feed us and then force us to do disgusting things with their friends." Bree hung her head for a moment, her lips quivering. "They told us we owed them, and we needed to pay off what we owed. In exchange, they would feed us and wouldn't hurt us." Bree paused for a moment as tears escaped her big brown eyes. "It was awful." Bree smothered a sob before continuing her story. "But one night at a house party, I managed to escape. I sold my only necklace and used the money to get on the bus that would take me as far away as possible. The gal at the bus ticket counter said the farthest my money would take me was to Paradise Lake. That's how I got here." "Well, you're here, and you're safe now." Al let out the breath she'd been holding as Bree shared her tragic story. A shiver went up her spine at the horrible images that came to mind. She looked over at Adam to see his forehead furrowed, his nostrils flared, and his hands clenched into a tight ball. She reached over, putting her hand over his clenched fist. He placed his other hand gently on top of her smaller one, keeping them connected in a way Al hadn't seen coming. For the first time in years, she didn't feel so alone. Adam looked through the large window to view the park across the street from the Stevenson Be Safe Foundation safe house. The doctors had given Bree the thumbs up to recuperate at the safe house. She needed time and rest to recover from her terrifying ordeal. Adam made a mental note to thank Jack for having the foresight to hire 2 mental health doctors who specialized in helping people suffering from trauma. Elle was in Bree's room now, talking with her and helping her get settled. Al was never far from his thoughts. Somehow she had gotten under his skin. He needed to shake off his growing attraction to her. Adam didn't want to have to deal with the possibility of falling for her. He'd done that once before with an ex-fiancé. It turned out she had only wanted to marry him for his money. He wasn't about to do that again. This time, it would be a fake marriage, only so that they could both get what they wanted. Al walked down the stairs and toward him. "Ready to go?" Adam looked down at her, wanting to run his fingers through the satin-like strawberry blonde hair that hung loose past her shoulders. Her aqua-colored top brought out her green eyes and highlighted her peaches and cream skin tone and rosy lips. As they walked to the truck, Adam forced himself to stop thinking so much about her kissable lips. "Is Bree okay now?" He tried to refocus. "Yes, she's doing better, but she'll need time to heal. I'm glad she's safe now." Al sighed as Adam helped her into his vehicle. "It's been a busy day. I'll be happy to get back to the ranch." Adam got in the truck, then stopped to look at her. "I thought maybe we could wind down and relax at one of my favorite seaside restaurants, the Boathouse." Adam started the truck and waited. "That sounds nice, but I can't. I'm not dressed for dining out." Al glanced down at her faded jeans and grimaced. I think you look beautiful, just how you are now. Besides, you don't need to worry because I know the owner, and I'm confident he'll find us a table with a good view. Well, if you're sure. Al picked at some lint on her jeans and peered up at him sideways with her brows furrowed. I am. All right then, I'll need to let my stepmother know I won't be home for supper. Al pulled her phone out of the pocket of her jeans and sent a quick text. Soon they arrived at the restaurant. This is nice. I sometimes forget what it's like to take a break and just relax for a while. It was a good idea. Adam only hoped Elle would feel the same way when she heard what he wanted to ask her.